Hello, and welcome to another episode of Deck Musings. So, yeah, I've got a big smile on my face for this episode. I didn't originally. Getting ready for these episodes is interesting. I don't like to spend an awful lot of time looking for stuff if I can avoid it. And this episode, I was in danger of doing that. So it'll come as no surprise to people watching this video, like regular viewers, is that we're in a period in Magic's history where it's quite possible that deck lists weren't always documented, and I find particularly when you're trying to look for standard decks from tournaments, it can be difficult to find a standard deck. Sometimes you'll come across a deck, it turns out to be an extended version or a legacy version. And you can see we're at this point here. So we've just had Mercadian Masques come in. And Tempest Block has rotated out. There are a number of cards that are still banned because, of course, there was that big banning as a result of Urza's block. Certain problematic cards. And you can see there's a list here, supposedly of standard decks of that time. And I take that on face value and assume that is correct from this article. And I tried to find a few of these and didn't have a lot of success. And one of the reasons why I like to try and stay within the standard metagame of the era or anything tighter than that, so block constructed or even in one occasion limited, is you are in danger of the same cards coming up all the time, which has happened already, but I'm trying to keep that to a fairly low number, and that's one of the reasons for keeping it within the standard metagame or a tighter card pool like block constructed. So for this episode I did have a little bit of problem, but the good thing is there's always a safety net here, which I think I said when I started the series originally, which is I can always do a theme deck, and that's what we're going to do in this, because what had happened was when I was looking at this period, it mentioned about rebels. So I was trying to find these different decks here, not having a lot of success. I did come across like a Rebels tournament deck, but unfortunately I think it was for extended, and you can get a better idea of this when you actually look at the Pro Tour and all the supporting like Grand Prix around that time, the time period we're talking about. So we've come out of this period here, so you can see this would have been around the time when Urza's Destiny had been released and was out there. And then we move into these Grand Prix. So November, December, but this is an extended format. So all of the decks here are going to be extended decks. So there's a good chance there's going to be a lot more older cards in there, which, does make it very repetitive when I'm actually doing the bulk of what this episode is about, which is exploring all the the different nooks and crannies and rabbit holes you can go down when you look at associated cards from a deck in terms of their what they do, their utility. Then we get a series of Grand Prix, another Pro Tour. Now this was Mercadian Masques, but it was Mercadian Masques booster draft, and I was a bit cautious about covering draft decks just because of the sheer variability in there. So you get a really nice tight set of cards to the set, but you get a larger diversity of cards, one-offs, two-offs, those sort of things. So I decided not to do another one of an episode based around a booster draft deck, because I had done that in the past. And then we get on, a bit later, we've got these various Grand Prix here. And then we get into Pro Tour New York, but by then Nemesis has been released. So we have a block constructed tournament, but like I said, it features Nemesis on. I'm not ready to go to Nemesis yet. That's next week. So this is going to be a good place to look for a possible deck for next week. Some Mercadian Masques. So like I said, I'm going to cover a theme deck because I'd seen an extended Rebel deck, I think it was, where it was like leveraging additional cards in the sideboard and the main deck, which were outside of the usual standard metagame. But the deck we're actually going to cover is this. So we're going to know that everything in this deck is pulled from a very tight card pool, and it allows us to go down various rabbit holes associated with the Rebel mechanic, for want of a better word. And you'll see what that is in a moment. You'll see there are going to be inevitably cards coming up which I have covered in the past. You notice Cho-Manno Revolutionaries in here because I'd used that particular card as a commander in a deck in an earlier episode because it suited that particular deck. But I'm looking forward to this. I don't think I have this deck in paper. I wish I did. It'd be a nice deck to have. So let's have a look at the deck. So 29 creatures, very heavy creature deck. We have 5 enchantments, 5 instants, 21 lands, and they're all from Mercadian Masques. Now the thing about Mercadian Masques is, to a lot of people, that was almost like the antithesis of the Mercadian Masque block was the antithesis of the Urza block, in that Urza's block was like super powerful, ridiculous cards in there. Owing to getting, what do they call it, like dragged across the carpet, so getting a bit of a chewing by senior management at Wizards of the Coast because Urza's block was so powerful. The designers, developers, people like Mike Rosewater dialed it back for this set, and as a consequence, it's tends to get thought of as an underpowered deck, but it does have this really interesting Rebels mechanic in it, amongst many other things. And if you, I like this set actually. It's really interesting thematically, I think. So if you're interested, check out my set musings episode on Mercadian Masques, which I did probably over a year ago. And I'll try and remember to include a link to that actually in the description. But it's fairly easy to find. If you just go to my channel and type in Mercadian Masques, you'll find it. There's also some like deck girdle episodes where I was sort of building decks from a sealed pool around that period as well. They're interesting to check out actually. So here we go. We have, you can see a number of rebels, but in amongst here there are also a number of non-rebels, although not many. So we've got Charm Peddler, single white to cast. I've got these in CMC order as well, just to make it a bit easier. 1 tap, discard a card from your hand. The next time a source of your choice would deal damage to target creature this turn, prevent that damage. You'll see there's a little bit of damage prevention theme here because of, well, you'll see what cards in here in a moment. You've probably spotted it all already. There's 3 Ramosian Sergeants, single white, it's a 1/1, 3 tap, search your library for a rebel card with converted mana cost 2 or less and put that card into play, then shuffle your library. So this is why I was attracted to this interesting tutoring for, in this case, rebels. You've probably seen this on other Magic card throughout, in different sets, but interesting in this one. So 3 tap acts as a tutor for rebels, but you can see it's conditional on certain mana costs. So what you end up with is this like scaling tutoring. So you know, you get a Ramosian Sergeant out, and then once you have enough mana to activate this 3, you can go and find a rebel, and that goes costs 2 or less, and that goes straight into play. And you see these scale, so you'll notice there's a relationship between the cost of casting it and the activation cost. So Ramosian Lieutenant is 1 and a white. It's a 1/2. This one's got 4 on that rebel activation cost, and it can do rebel cards with converted mana cost 3 or less. Steadfast Guard, although a rebel, doesn't have that rebel tutoring mechanic on it. It's a 2/2 for 2. Attacking doesn't cause Steadfast Guard to tap, so it does have vigilance on it. Devout Witness, which is a spell shaper, so not a rebel, 2 and a white, 2/2, has this interesting ability on it, whereby for 2 and a white, you tap, you discard a card from your hand, and then you destroy a target artifact or enchantment. So you can already see how things have been dialed back. A lot of cards in Mercadian Masques, you might notice they're either higher cost from something similar in Urza's block, or in terms of the casting cost maybe, or the activation cost, or they've got some additional cost beyond the activation cost. Nightwind Glider, it is a rebel, so it can be tutored by these other cards with this mechanic on it, you see up here, but it doesn't have a mechanic itself that does that. So 2 and a white, 2/1, flying, protection from black. Then we've got Ramosian Captain, so 2 and 2 white, so 3 to cast. Yeah, so this was 2 to cast, this was 3 to cast. So on this one, the activation cost to search out a rebel is 5, and what it can search out is a converted mana cost of 4 or less. Notice also you shuffle your library after all of these. That has first strike on it as well, so 2/2. Then we got 2 and a white, it's task force. It is a rebel, but again it doesn't have the tutoring on it, has a different ability. So whenever it becomes the target of spell or ability, it gets +0, +3 until end of turn. So that's interesting, because that can be potentially abused. You can target it with stuff to get the pump effect. Thermal Glider, 2 and a white with flying, protection from red. It's another rebel, 2/1, but no tutoring. Ballista Squad, another rebel, 3 and a white. X and a white, it deals X damage to target attacking or blocking creature, and it's a 2/2. And notice, a lot of, so we've got 2 of, 3 of, 2 of, 2 of, 2 of, 2 of, so on. It's a theme deck. That's a thing in a theme deck. And you won't find many theme decks that are what I call tournament tuned. They're tuned for variability. So they make an interesting, make every time you play it interesting, because it doesn't quite play the same every time. Oh, there's Cho-Manno Revolutionary, 2 and 2 whites, 2/2. It's a rebel legend. So you can see here we could tutor for this with our Ramosian Captain if we wanted. There's going to be some other ones here, but nothing less than a Ramosian Captain will do it in terms of mana cost. So prevent all damage that will be dealt to Cho-Manno Revolutionary. I'm calling him Cho-Manno now. So yeah, and you can see I mentioned about Charm Peddler to do with damage prevention. So there's some damage prevention going on there. And funnily enough, some combat damage shenanigans with Pious Warrior, also a rebel, 3 and a white, 2/3. Whenever it's dealt combat damage, you gain that much life, but no rebel tutoring. Ramosian Commander, 2 and 2 white, so same casting cost as Cho-Manno. It's a 2/4, and it's 6 to cast. 6 to activate. It's rebel tutoring ability. Tap it, search aloud for a rebel card with converting mana cost 5 or less. So I can tutor for this. Jhovall Riders, 4 and a white, so 3/3 with trample, and then top of the curve, also 5 mana, or 5 converted mana cost, but this is 3 and 2 white. It's the Sky Marshal. With flying, it's a 3/3. 7 tap, search your library for a rebel card with converted mana cost 6 or less and put that card into play. So that will, in this deck, hunt down any rebel. Because what the highest rebel casting cost is actually this one. Along with these, anything. So these are 5, these are 4. So everything downwards. Enchantment wise, so you'll notice we've spoken about these before in other sets, I think, not necessarily in the past, but I've done so many different sets now over the past few years. We've come across these, what they call them, enchantments, I think is the thing. So these enchantments that in various sets can be played as an instant under, maybe there's a certain condition there. So with this one, which is Cho-Manno's Blessing, 2 white, you may play Cho-Manno's Blessing anytime you could play an instant. As Cho-Manno's Blessing comes into play, choose a colour. Enchanted creature has protection from the chosen colour. This effect does not remove Cho-Manno's Blessing. So it sticks around, unlike an instant, but you can play anytime you play an instant. There are other cards where you get this, it's an instant and an enchantment where, you might have a choice to either play it like an instant and then it goes away, or play it like an enchantment and it sticks around. But this is a bit different than that. And again, those sort of cards are spread out through Magic's history. We've got 2 arrests, another enchantment, an aura, as that would be called now. 2 and a white, enchanted creature can't block, can't attack or block. Its activated abilities can't be played. And Moonlit Wake, 2 and a white, whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, you gain 1 life. So you can see through the damage prevention and the life gain, there's a sort of try not to lose element of the deck as well. That's just a regular enchantment. We've got 5 instants, 2 disenchants, which we've seen numerous occasions now. Different artwork for this set. 2 and a white, destroy target artifact or enchantment. We've got an artifact. We've got an Afterlife. So 2 and a white, instant, destroy target creature. It can't be regenerated. Its creature puts a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying into play. And then Ramosian Rally, which is an instant, 3 and a white. If you control the planes, you may tap an untapped creature you control. Instead of paying Ramosian Rally's mana cost, creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. One thing this always makes me think of when you're playing a deck like this with certain creature types is, you remember in Magic when we got to, what was it, around Lorwyn Block, I think that was the first time they did it, which was this idea of certain types of instants which are have the same typing as them as a creature type. So I wonder at what point they had that idea, because you can imagine in this deck it says a rebel card, not like a rebel creature. So I wonder if, and I can't remember, I should look it up actually and see if there's been any rebel cards which weren't creatures, because that's interesting. Because this would be an interesting card to have that on there, instant, however it was worded on law, and I can't remember, but the instant subtype would be rebel. But maybe that would be too powerful for the set. 3 and a white. If you control a planes, you may tap an untapped creature you control instead of paying Ramosian Rally's mana cost. Creatures you control get +1/+1 until end of turn. So land-wise, we have 1 Fountain of Cho and 20 planes. Fountain of Cho, so there's a cycle of these cards, 1 in each colour. They come into play tapped. You put a storage counter on Fountain of Cho if you want, so you can tap it, put a storage counter on there. Remove any number of storage counters from Fountain of Cho, add 1 white mana to your mana pool for each storage counter removed this way. You have to tap it to do that. You'll notice there's no ability just to generate white mana. It has to be all done through the usage of storage counters. Now the other thing with this, it doesn't do like some counter lands you see, where when the counters all go away, the land leaves the battlefield. So it stays in play without any counters on it, but you can't use it to generate any mana until you get counters on it, because you have to remove storage counters to do that. So interesting way of storing surplus mana, carrying it over, because this would have been in a period of, would this been in the era of mana burn still, I think, as well. So yeah, so there's various cards in Magic's history that allow you to carry mana over if you haven't spent it, and yeah, that's one way of doing it. I'm sure that'll come up when we do dig through this. So I should have done this around the other way. Mercadian Masques. There's our planes cards. Very nice. Seeing as this is the first time for this particular series, we've seen these basic lands. It's not going to hurt to do this, even though we're not going to play the other ones in the deck, because this is a mono white deck. And basic, isn't it? There we go. I assume these have come up on my one of my Land Ahoy episodes that I traditionally do around December-ish. I think actually most years I have done that. I can't remember when I did the first one. It probably was in the same time period. Yes, my Yuletide video. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the next one. So, Fountain of Cho. Fountain of Cho. Reference by calciform pools. So these are other lands which have that storage counter shenanigans on them. You'll notice they actually also can generate colourless mana, similar to a Catian Store. Interesting. You may choose not to untap, but you can always counter on instead. So yeah, does it slightly different way, but interesting how it adds the counters on by them. It's staying tapped. We'll look at these storage lands, but before I do that, I want to see how this is worded here. Yeah, same wording. Hasn't been errated. Did that get errated? These are from Fallen Empires, of course. You remember the storage lands from Fallen Empires. There's a slight clarification on here on the when that happens actually. That got reprinted in 5th edition. So I was just going to look at the cycle here. Nice. I'm wondering with these, if I go into full, I think the good thing about Mercadian Masques is when I come to the Friday episode, yeah, the artwork episode, I think I have a number of Mercadian Masques cards, so it'll be a bit more interesting. The Friday episodes have been unfortunately slim pickings recently, and there'll be a bit of an increase in cards for the Friday episode from Mercadian Masques, and then it's going to tail off a bit, and I'll have to decide what I'm going to do in the interim until I get up to I start opening a lot of stuff, probably around 8th edition, so there'll probably be a bit of a shuffle round in the week in terms of, you know, putting something in instead of the Friday artwork video for a little while, maybe swapping the Saturday one to a Friday, but I'll see what I decide on. I'm going to try and keep it at a, 4 Magic the Gathering videos a week still, so I just have to decide between the end of the Mercadian Masques blocks and up to 8th edition what other artwork video I'm going to do. Well, we'll see. Yeah, cool. And what I'm probably going to do here, just as a rabbit hole to go down, which is we can do like type land, and then lands that mention counters. I mean, I'll also probably come up with cards that have something about putting counters on something else or can't be countered. I'm just looking. So I think it does tend to call them storage counters, doesn't it? That's the. It's always interesting whenever you do these, dives into Scryfall. I don't know if anybody does the same as me, but I sort of just refine it a little bit each time I go in. So I try something fairly broad, just see what variations come up in terms of the sort of things that get pulled up, and then tweak it slightly. This looks really interesting, actually. Release date. It's the first time what we saw counters was on the Dark. So we got Fallen Empires, Mercadian Masques, which we're talking about, and there was a gap. And then, not surprisingly, when there's a gap, often, not always, you see stuff crop up in the time spiral block. And that's what happened. Nice little cycle there. And nice touch as well. You know, it's got mana fixing. So interesting storage counter system and a way of fixing manas. But you can see the storage counter, there's a cost to this as well. So it's almost like, I don't know, indirect filtering as well. Yeah, fascinating why they did it. And then you get a couple of ones like this. So Crucible of the Spirit Dragon, Majoring Network. Conditional. Well, this one's conditional in terms of what you can spend it on, and it is any combination of colours in your mana pool. This mana in any combination of colours in your mana pool. Spend its mana only to cast dragon spells or activate dragon ability or dragons, abilities of dragons. This one, however, is purely colourless mana. So it looks like, you know, they've never been tempted to do any other, like potential Wooburg-ish shenanigans. I suppose there's always a danger with counters, isn't there? Like, you can abuse it through proliferate. Ballista Squad. So this was reprinted a few times. We should keep an eye open on how many times this was reprinted in other sets. Actually, did Rebels crop up? Because I know Cho-Manno was reprinted in 10th edition. So what is this classed as? Hate attacker, hate blocker, mana sink and removal, creature burner. I'm just trying to think anything here that we haven't covered in previous episodes much. I think most of these we've... So what's a hate attacker? Yeah. Basically anything that mentions attacking or blocking creatures. That's going to be a ton of stuff. Mana sinks we've looked at a lot before. And they can come in all sorts of shapes and sizes. Yeah, things like fire breathing is a good example of that. And mana sinks just cards with repeatable abilities to put mana into. And sometimes I'll use the term scalable as well. Removal creature burn, so removing by burn, and again, no surprise there, there's tons of those. But what caught my eye is stuff with ballistas on. Let me just see. Yeah, this is going to... That's the one I was trying to think of, actually. Goblin Bombardment. So, yeah, one way to find these sort of cards in Scryfall is to actually look for cards with that have been tagged as having a ballista on them. And you can see there's quite a number of those are in red. I won't look up to see if Ballista Tribal is a thing. I do know that people build, you know, artwork themed decks, particularly EDH decks, but yeah, let's not go down a Ballista Tribal rabbit hole, shall we? Funnily, yeah, I don't think it's come up. It'll be funny if it comes up one time in a Commander Fodder episode, won't it? I don't think I've ever attempted to do that. Is to try and build a artwork theme deck. Right, Charm Peddler. Okay, another Mercadian Masques. This is a spell shaper. So what have we got? So there was a cycle at common of spell shapers. So by default, when I do these episodes, I must admit I will tend to go for the cycle because, yeah. Oh, his first printer. Oops, that's better. Yeah, we'll have to see if I've got these as a cycle. Not sure. Come to Friday. Yeah, favourite things in Magic: cycles, artefacts, and elements. I think that pretty much covers everything. Damage prevention, yeah, discard outlet. So, what is that there? Okay, so yeah, that's an enchantment that does the same. Yeah, I don't really see anything specifically in the deck. Maybe I've missed something that is abusing this discarding card from your hand. Yeah, I just can't remember off the top of my head if there's other cards in the set which interact. I mean, obviously there's going to be stuff in the set that interacts with the graveyard, but I don't see anything specifically in this deck. Well, we'll see as we go along. And we've looked at discard outlets before. There's loads of those. What I was interested in, I think, with this here is the whole spell shaper thing. So you have these creatures, they have these spells stapled to them. Now that happens a lot in Magic. It's not a special thing for spell shapers, but I think historically when it's gone on cards, it's often a specific cycle of things. That's why you get a cycle of spell shapers often. So it's often their spells are cycles of other spells from Magic's history. I'm not saying that's always the case, but I think you often find that actually. And one way to do that, and we can check here, is do this and see if we get clusters in sets, in terms of its first printing. Wow, a lot of spell shapers generally in Mercadian Masques. Look at that. I don't think. Maybe they were. Maybe there are a ton of cycles of these. I'm just going to have a... I don't normally do this because this isn't really a set review, but I can't resist it. I mean, obviously I've done a set musings for this set, but let me just bring something up. I'll drag it across. Because, oh yeah. Yeah, the trouble is I've just done so many of these set musings I can't read, but look, yeah. common spell shapers. These ones all had the classic alpha spell attached. Uncommon spell shapers. Classic spell attached. Yeah, because that was a set that had some real interesting cycles in it, didn't it? Now thinking about it. Okay, back to the job in hand. So yeah, as we can see, lots of spell shapers, lots of cycles in the set at different rarities. And we get some more here. Looks like we could have a cycle going on there as well. So that would be Nemesis, and that would be Prophecy. Oh, look at that. Legend Spell Shapers. Spell Shaper Tribal. And, oh, surprise, surprise, Time Spiral. And Plane of Chaos. And Future Sight. Well, isn't that interesting? So yeah, basically spell shapers are in Mercadian Masques block, and then Time Spiral block, and we have one on a, for some reason, oh, there we go, yeah, it's flip side of a siege. Interesting. Ah, Cho-Manno. Yeah, damage prevention self. Or a Semite Guardian. Don't take target creature this turn. Oh, with Cho-Manno we might look at. Damage prevention. Again, I'm pretty sure I've looked at this sort of thing in previous episodes. And again, you know, if you're familiar with Magic and various sort of backstories, you might recognise a lot of cards here with namesakes that come up a lot. There we go. All over Mercadian Masques. And yeah, reprinted in 10th edition. Devout Witness, not reprinted until Vintage Masters. Another Spell Shaper. And yeah, part of the Alpha Spell Shaper stuff. So you can probably recognise the corresponding spell from Alpha. These look like these have been reprinted all over the place. Or some of them anyway. And yeah, you've got, yeah, it's Disenchant with a body, basically. So this one's only ever been printed in Mercadian Masques. Just a 3/3 with trample for 5. So that will put it in the French vanilla category. So that French vanilla is creatures and vehicles that have only keyword abilities. That's the definition of French vanilla. Iron Tusk. Oh yeah, this was in a theme deck from Tempest, I think. This one. But you can see functional reprint. This one's an elephant. This one's a rebel. Anything else we notice here? Oh yeah. So the errata here is, you can see they've added in human. So human rebel. You can see as well with the spell shapers, they've errated in on this particular one, human, Cho-Manno, human rebel. So a lot of these cards have had human added in as well. Anything? Oh no, I don't really want to add any more to that. Flying protection from black. So we've got a flying 2/1 for 2 and a white. Also is pro black. Never been reprinted. So I suspect there's quite a few here that we'll see like that. So it has evasion. And of course there's tons of cards that have abilities on them that are evasive in various ways. So this whole, let's have a look at for this card. So CMC of 3. We'll go for monocolour cards that are 2/1s. See what else. Sometimes it's interesting to see, you know, when you've got 3 casting cost for a 2/1, what other goodies do you get? And so always interesting to put that on a timeline to see again what sort of goodies you had when you got a 2/1 for 3. So back in the day of Legends, 2/1 for 3 got your first strike. Same set, you got your first, sorry, let's say first Swamp Walk. So you got your Swamp Walk, then we got first strike, some sort of regenerate ability. First strike and regenerate, and we have flying on Feral Shadow. So was that the first time we saw flying? Yeah, I think so. And then we have some shadow stuff. So you can see there's a number of 2/1s for 3 that are shadows in Tempest. And also the follow-on sets. Of course, in Urza's, when you get it, you get flying and first strike. That's funny. So typical, yeah, this is a really good example. So you've got Urza's block. So Priest of Gix, 2 and a black, so 2/1. Oh, and by the way, when it comes into play, you get 3 black added to your mana pool. That's amusing. Well, that will be that's Legacy, so that's is it 2/1 with Flash? Yeah. So would that have been before? Yeah, Flash was keyworded. I would say anytime you could play an instant. Yeah, so it's all over the map, isn't it, around that block? Some things they're ridiculous, other things not so much. You can see we've got quite a number of 2/1s in this block generally. So we have these 2 flyers, one with black, one with red, which I'm sure we'll see this one in a moment. Prophecy. There's Nemesis there. Tadrate, you got bottom breathing. So nowadays, if you have a 2/1 for 3, what do you get? Mocking Sprite has flying. Instants and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast. Voracious Vermin, 2 and a black, 2/1. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 black rat creature token with this creature can't block. Whenever another creature you control dies, put a 1/1 counter on Voracious Vermin. Interesting. No mythics. What about rares? You can see here in Prophecy you've got these mercenaries as well here. Rebel mercenaries. We've sort of tweaked the ability on that. Slightly different thing. Cool. Anyway, moving on. Pious Warrior. Another rebel, but doesn't have the tutoring ability on it. Only in Mercadian Masques. Whenever it's dealt combat damage, you gain that much life. So yeah, a bit of a don't die theme. Enrage. So yeah, Enrage, okay, so clearly what that as a tag is, of course you've got the Enrage ability, but you can see here, it's really anything where when something is dealt damage, so you can see there's a bit of equipment here, enchantment, so whatever it's enchanted or the creature itself, looks like something good happens. So in the one we're looking at, you get life gain, others it's counters. This one untaps. Oh, and it's Norn. That's rather flavourful. Yeah, so there we go. Oh yeah, so it's a bit of a cheat here because I knew I was going to go down have to go down lots of rabbit holes that were very similar. So what I wanted to do is just show you. So if you do a search on Ramosian, you'll probably see a pattern here. So here's all our rebels which have this search for rebel ability. Ignore this is just the instant, but all the creatures, you know, so if we go back to the original deck, so 1, 2, hang on, let's do it from here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all have this tutoring ability for rebels. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So yeah, basically the giveaway is for this set if they have Ramosian in the card name, then yeah, it's attributed to this. And for the set, the only other card where that's the case is this instant. So any creature in the set that has Ramosian in it in the name has this search your library for a rebel card of 30 mana cost, whatever, and you can see that scaled to the number here, the casting cost, as a sort of, so for each time there's an increase. If I can just show you here, so it's 1 to cast, 3 to activate, 2 to cast, 4 to activate, 3 to cast, 5, 4 to cast, 6, and then 5 to cast, 7. So there's like a 2 mana gap between those, between the casting cost and the activation cost. And then if we sort this by actually sort it by CMC, which here is mana value, and again ignore the instant. There you can see it on the curve. So I'm going to just click on these, go through them, just see if we get anything interesting when we look at the tags. So cycle of, yeah, recruiters. That was the term I was trying to remember, the recruiting ability. So cycle of 5 rebels from Mercadian Masques. Each one has a rebel recruiting ability. Search for Cardamom and cost 2 to 6. So yeah, it's a recruiting ability. $12 cards in Magic, which have the tribe of Rebel on them. As you can see, the vast majority of them are here. If in this set, if I do this, we can probably get a better idea of what might be going on here on a timeline. So yeah, you can see it came up in Nemesis, which is the next set. But here, notice it's not in the name. And these are all rebels. Yep, don't see anything else really. Again, you know, here they are in Time Spiral block. yeah, so another interesting tag, and we'll see these tags are going to be the same on all of these, a lot of them. So tutor to battlefield, and there's loads of cards that do that. Probably one type of thing you probably see used to seeing a lot in Magic is just generally is, regardless of necessarily whether they're on the battlefield or not, but just generally is cards that tutor copies of themselves as well, exact copies of themselves, which of course is no good in format like EDH, but obviously in any other format, in a non-singleton format, then yeah, that's great fun to abuse and play around with. And I'm sure we can think of one card in particular from Magic's history where that created a whole slew of decks around that idea. What's this? Non-creature tribal. Cards that care about creature size but not necessarily on a creature card. So they're compatible with tribal cards from Lorwyn, for example. Oh yeah, yes, yeah. Back to the point I said, which is, it doesn't say, it just says rebel. So it does leave that open if there was ever, the word rebel in here that wasn't a creature. So with that type of rebel, Enchantment Rebel Order. There we go. Bound in silence. But you can see in Magic's history, we do have quite a number of rebels. They don't necessarily have that recruitment ability on them, which is what we're more interested in. But yeah, as a subtype. Let me just duplicate this, otherwise it's going to get, it's nice and easy to go back then if I need to. So we've got the same sort of things here. Yeah, so we got the same sort of stuff to look for. Same sort of tags, because they are really just like almost like scaled versions of each other, obviously to fit in with the mechanic and the theme. Some of them have extra things, like this one's got evasion on it, for example. Obviously just takes us into interesting where the tribal rebel tag here just refers to this group of cards, as opposed to if we do that. And then the Ramosian Rally. Combat trick. Power boost all. Tap fuel creature. Wow. Synergy planes. Pitch spell. Yeah, so you're pitching. So if you control the planes, you may tap one, tap a creature you control instead of paying Ramosian's Rally mana cost. Spells that give you an option to cast them for free. In here is what the definition of a pitch spell is. So you're paying for them in some other way, and that you get to, instead of paying its mana cost. Of course, lots of cards that have synergies with various land types. Instant speed, yeah, puts you into the area of combat trick, because you can cast it while you're in combat. And then power boost all. There's loads of cards that will do that. And I'm assuming here, a power boost here would be just, there's a certain condition, I suspect. I don't think these are all going to be these are going to be necessarily cards that buff them, indefinitely. With these, there seems to be some sort of a condition, either end of turn. Actually, here it does say, so it must include. I was wondering whether it was just going to include stuff that either did it till end of turn, or as long as something was happening or not happening. But here, as long as the permanent's in play, then those sort of cards are also here as well. Tap to fuel creature. Okay, Steadfast Guard. Attacking does so vigilance. This is another one here. There's not been many, but if we look at, if I go back to all our Ramosian friends and show the images in full, we can then, it's easier to see here. So how many of these? Mercadian Masques. So yeah, they weren't. That didn't come up again. That particular ability in any other set, or those cards weren't reprinted, should I say? Right. Oh. So, French vanilla. So 2/2 for 2. Attacking creature does not, and it has vigilance. So this is probably a pretty powerful creature for the set. Alaborn Grenadier. So that would have been from. Was it Portal? Probably. Yeah. I think that's the symbol. Alpine Watchdog. So worse than Alpine Watchdog. Oh, because it's double white as opposed to colourless and white. Although in a monocolour deck, I mean, it's not necessarily harder to cast. So there's a whole load of these. It looks like a 1 and a white, I suspect, that have vigilance on them. Yeah, it looks like a popular card to do functional reprints for in this format. Alaborn Grenadier we've seen is similar to, worse than Dusk Legion Duelist, which is 1 and a white for 2/2 with vigilance, and whenever one or more 1/1 counters are put on Dusk Legion Duelist, draw a card. This ability triggers only once each turn. Better than Shrinekeeper. Oh, 2/2 for 2. That's a pure vanilla creature. And similar to Veteran Cavalier. Yep, so pretty popular template to see in Magic. 2/2 for 2 with vigilance. Task Force. Whenever Task Force becomes a target spell ability, gets +0/+3 until end of turn. Ended up in Jumpstart. Yeah, I'm curious about this one. What if there's any tags? Is that heroic? Whenever you cast a spell targeted permanent, something good happens. There you go. So yeah, heroic mechanic. Well, heroic bottom, I suppose. Because with most of these, they look like they're symmetrical. Whereas that one, there's another few here that buff the power but not the toughness, but that one specifically just does toughness. So these are all be things where if it becomes the target of something, then something good happens for the player as well. But specifically, or something bad happens to the person doing the targeting. They have a downside. I'm just curious here. I don't really know how useful this is as a thing, but we'll see. So, actually, let's specifically do that. Let's be very specific. Yeah, I know it was a bit of a turtly thing. I don't know how easy that's going to come up, whether we're going to see lots of turtles. Let's try that. Oh, okay. Maybe not. So you'll notice there's a number of turtles here that have, low power, high toughness, relatively speaking. But I was curious as to whether, you know, there's anywhere they have ability on them that makes them a little bit more turtley, sort of thing. But clearly not. That's rather a shame. You could almost have a thematic thing where it gets, you know, a high toughness with no power and has defender or something as it, you know, pulls its head inside its in its shells, you know, something like that. Thermal glider, flying protection from red. So in the deck you've got the red one here, we've got the black one as well. Another rebel, but doesn't have the recruiter ability on it. Yeah, evasion, 8 red. It's a 2-1 for 3. So we've had a look about that. Arrest. So pacifism is the tag here. Enchanted creature can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be played. We'll have a look at that in a moment. But let's look at some of the things that it's similar to. So bound in gold. And then it's worse than Desert's Hold. Better than Luminous Bonds. Worse than a prison sentence. And worse than Planar Disruption. So let's look at all the passivisms first. A form of removal that prevents a creature from attacking and usually also from blocking and or activating its abilities. So just so we're clear again there. So this is arrest. Oops. Okay, so there's our arrest there. If we look at arrest generally, you can see it's been reprinted a few times with different artwork. But what I wanted to do is just bring this up, get a feel for the timeline of the sort of pacifism effects. So enchantment, enchant creature. You've also got, if you remember, the Lycids as well, which had this weird effect on them where they could be turned into creature enchantments. That was a cycle, wasn't it? From that set, I think. Yeah. And there was one in each of the colours. So it's interesting there where they've got it on top, you know. We've talked about, you know, instants that are enchantments, and then here we've got a creature that can turn into a creature enchantment. Qatar's Desire from Odyssey, which stops creatures from attacking, but also has this threshold ability on them. So once you get to the threshold, which is 7 or more cards in your graveyard, enchanted creature can't block. And we had this, didn't we, as a commander one week. because there was a card where it prevented a certain amount of prevention from attacking or blocking. I'm trying to remember the exact card now. I'm trying to remember if that was the Crawl Space episode or not. We've got things like suppression bonds, so you can see it. Yeah, just looking at this, it's a popular enchantment, an aura or enchantment to have in white. But you see the odd one crops up in other colours. Yeah, interesting. Ice Cage, I always remember this from M10. And its ability, you can see there, is not dissimilar to the crystallization. Okay. Cho-Manno's Blessing. So this has got this protection from the chosen colour. So when it comes into play, you pick a colour and you can make plays any time you would play an instant. So let's see what this is tagged up as. So flat. I was trying to think of the term here, actually it would be more accurate, which is a flash aura. Yeah, I mistakenly, I think, really called it enchantment, which I suppose, strictly speaking, that's a slightly different thing in Magic, but it's pretty close. But yeah, this is a flash aura, and there were a cycle of those as well, as we've seen a lot of cycles in Mercadian Masques that were rightly or wrongly never reprinted. Moonlit Wake. Nice artwork. Whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, you gain 1 life. Death trigger. Similar to Ashes of the Abhorrent. But has that ability on it where players can't cast spells from graveyards or activate abilities of cards in graveyards. Life gain. So yeah, loads of cards with death triggers on them. Loads of cards with life gain on them. We have an Afterlife in here. This has actually cropped up in a couple of Commanders decks, which is interesting. It's interesting removal. So turn a white, a destruction spell. So a destruction spell in white, but what the controller of the creature you're destroying gets is a 1/1 white spirit creature token with flying. Notice also the target creature can't be regenerated as well. So it's, pretty powerful white instant. So donate token, shares name with mechanics, swap removal, move creature destroy, token generator, crib swap. I think crib swap as well is another popular card in some Commander products as well. Right? Yeah, 2018, 2015. So got this changeling on it as well as it's a tribal instant. card is every creature type, which is interesting in a rebel deck. Yeah, vintage rebels. I was going to look. So we've got donate token. That's basically what you give your opponent a token, and that's as a result of a number of different things you can see here. See, now I'm really curious because I wonder how many I completely forgotten that Crib Swap was a tribal instant shapeshifter. So yeah, it's all creature types, and now I'm curious as if got instants that are shapeshifters. I mean, yeah, Lorwyn block type thing. Oh look, there we go. I love it when it uncovers these cards. This is really what this episode is all about. So no shapeshifter sorceries, and I'm assuming no shapeshifter. Oh, yeah, sorry. Damn. I know when I say something like that, it's going to be, yeah, because of course you have, artifact creatures. I forgot about that. Yeah, so you're going to find artifact creatures, shapeshifters. Oh yeah, Phyrexian Metamorph, of course. So, okay, light bulb's just gone on. Of course, so yeah, you can. So that rebel recruiter can, of course, recruit for any shapeshifter. Obviously. Oh dear, that's funny. Yeah. The light bulb's only just gone on in my head. I mean, the downside is that recruiting ability has pretty heavy investment in mana, relatively speaking, but that is interesting. I mean, the shape-shifting, subtype or creature type is interesting because of the flexibility in, index, where you want, to abuse this, where, it's every creature type at all times. And so it's no surprise if you a lot of times you'll look at these like EDH auto-include lists and you'll see a number of shapeshifter cards that seem to always be on there when they go through like the different colours. I mean, I don't want to do it in this episode, but it is fun. My idea of fun, and in fact, actually, you can do it. There's an easy way to do it. Is if you do this, okay, and then just scroll through and just see how many times these shapeshifters, you know, crop up in Commander product, just as a general rule of thumb. And you won't see, then suddenly you'll see some of these will crop up on here. Or the other place is sometimes keep your eye out for like multiplayer product as well. Like, you know, I don't know if many featured in the plane chase decks or not. And there is I'm a bit of a loss actually. There is to help you here, there is a Scryfall command from what I remember, where you can get it to sort of just show you all of the Commander product, but I can't remember it off the top of my head as to what that is. I don't know if it's something like that, or there's actually like a variation on a tag. I don't think you can do it that way actually. Because when I did, was it CMD? No, anyway, I'm not going to play around here, but yeah, I can't remember what it is. I could look it up easy enough, but yeah, there is I'm pretty sure there is a Scryfall command that does that, just lists all the ones that are in the Commander products as well. I'm really enjoying this episode. This is probably going to be really long. You know, we're getting near the end now, but I bet I've been talking for ages now. Disenchant, not much to say. We've looked at this card in numerous episodes. Yeah, different artwork in this one, quite different artwork. I think the artwork's pretty cool actually. And then you get these, you know, similar to, so the seals here, of course, naturalize, which is the green one, and it's as we've seen, it was stapled to Devout Witness, which is in this deck. You've got Abolish, which again talks about something we said already, which is, you know, pitch cards, where you're pitching a card, in this case a plains card, to instead of playing its as an alternate to playing its mana cost. And what was that from? That's the dual deck, isn't it? Let's have a look. Just how many times this has been. So yeah, it was in Prophecy, which is in this particular block. That was it. Elspeth versus Tezzeret. I actually have all the dual decks. That was something I tried to make sure I collected over time, and was greatly helped by the dual decks sort of compendium edition, where they had the first 4. So yeah, there's a cycle of those in, so something to look forward to in the future set if it comes up again. See, I said I didn't have much to talk about with this particular card, with Disenchant, but how wrong was I? Now, I was going to just look and try and get a feel for all the different artwork, how many times this has been reprinted, and it goes way back. You got like the seal version, and then the one with the sword, and then this thing where they're blowing stuff up. But yeah, reprinted in fairly quick succession with different artwork. Yeah, it's only just been in as a Saga 6th edition and in Mercadian Masques. So So obviously there for the benefit of, you know, the fact that it's been reprinted so many times with sets that are going to run alongside each other in standard. You know, it's there for draft purposes, and also with core sets, when core sets rotate out every 2 years. If they ever sort of dial back, so just thinking here, you know, you've got 6th edition, 7th edition, you got Mercadian Masques. So when Mercadian Masques rotates out of standard, then Disenchant from 6th edition would still be in standard at that point. And you can see that was a Battle Royal set, so that's not a, you know, like a set release in boosters. You can see there was a gap here where this was the last Disenchant in a set outside of a core set for a while. There's Time Spiral. M20. But as we've seen, yeah, there's, you know, reprint or cards that are either very close to this, or functional reprints, or cards in other colours that do the same sort of thing. So there we go. And then finally, Ramosian Rally. So with this one, you know, you can tap an untap creature instead of paying its mana cost. And we did already look at this because it was part of our sort of Ramosian buddies. So yeah, power boost all, tap field creature. Yeah, I've always fancied building a deck round this. May have done it already actually and just forgotten. That's quite possible. Because there's now just been so many there's been so many episodes of musing type stuff. So, you know, deck musings, you know, Commander Fodder, Commander Durdle, where I've been building decks. So this may well have come up already as a commander. Although I don't think so. I don't know if I ever built Cephalid Tribal or not. I'll have to look back and see. Okay, so there we have it. Interesting deck. As I said, it was a theme deck, but I wanted to go through this because of this recruiter ability, and no doubt we'll see similar things in other sets or other blocks. Mercenaries, I think, springs to mind. Something similar. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future episode.